The air inside the packed courtroom was thick with tension. High-profile cases always drew attention, but this one was different. Pam Bondi, the United States Attorney General, sat confidently at the prosecution's table, her blonde hair neatly styled, her navy blue suit sharp and professional. She was no stranger to pressure, but even she could sense that today was about to take an unexpected turn. Across from her stood Daniel Mercer, a well-known criminal defense attorney with a reputation for pushing boundaries. Mercer was in his mid-50s, with graying hair and a sharp tongue that had won him plenty of cases, but also plenty of enemies. He prided himself on being ruthless in the courtroom, and today he had his sights set on embarrassing Pam Bondi in front of the entire legal community. As the trial commenced, Bondi laid out a compelling argument against Mercer's client, a wealthy businessman accused of fraud and corruption. Her voice was firm, unwavering, but Mercer, he wasn't interested in facts. He wanted a spectacle. He smirked as he stood up, slowly adjusting his expensive cufflinks before pacing toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "we all know Ms. Bondi loves the spotlight. She thrives on media attention, doesn't she?" He turned toward her. "Tell me, Madam Attorney General, are you here to prosecute a case or to audition for your next TV interview?" A few people in the courtroom chuckled nervously. Bondi, however, didn't flinch. She'd dealt with worse. But Mercer wasn't finished. "You love to play the role of America's hero," he continued, stepping closer to her table. "But let's be honest, you don't care about justice. You care about your career. Isn't that right?" The courtroom fell silent. The judge gave Mercer a warning look, but the lawyer ignored it. He leaned in just slightly, lowering his voice, but making sure everyone could still hear. "Maybe instead of pretending to be a prosecutor, you should go back to making headlines for the cameras." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Bondi took a deep breath. She could have snapped back, could have played into his game. But instead, she calmly folded her hands and met Mercer's gaze with an icy stare. Then she said one simple sentence that would change everything. "Mr. Mercer, I suggest you choose your words carefully, because in a few minutes, you might not be practicing law at all." A hush fell over the room. Mercer raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Oh? And what exactly do you mean by that?" Bondi just smiled, her confidence unwavering. Because what Mercer didn't know? She already had a game-changing piece of evidence, and in a matter of minutes, everything was about to blow up in his face. A tense silence gripped the courtroom. Daniel Mercer's smug grin hadn't faded yet, but Pam Bondi could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He had just publicly insulted the United States Attorney General, thinking he had the upper hand. But he had no idea what was coming next. Bondi turned to her assistant, who handed her a thick folder. She stood up slowly, her movements deliberate, her confidence unshaken. "Your Honor," she addressed the judge, "before we proceed, I'd like to present new evidence regarding Mr. Mercer's involvement in this case." Mercer let out a dry laugh. "Oh, here we go," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. Bondi ignored him and continued. "This morning, my office received a series of financial records directly linked to Mr. Mercer. These records indicate that, over the past 6 months, he has received multiple large deposits from an anonymous offshore account, an account tied directly to the defendant in this case." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The jury exchanged glances. The judge leaned forward, his expression suddenly serious. Mercer's confidence wavered for the first time. "That's ridiculous," he scoffed. "You're accusing me of—" "Bribery and obstruction of justice," Bondi interrupted. "And there's more." She motioned to her assistant, who handed a USB drive to the bailiff. "These aren't just numbers on a page," Bondi said. "This drive contains audio recordings of Mr. Mercer discussing the case with third parties, before evidence was even submitted to the court." Mercer's face paled. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Bondi, are you telling me you have proof that Mr. Mercer knowingly manipulated this trial?" Bondi nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. The evidence is clear. Not only did Mr. Mercer accept illegal payments to protect his client, but he also coached witnesses to lie on the stand. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Mercer's hands clenched into fists. "This is a setup," he snapped, his voice shaking. This is outrageous. She's trying to ruin my career." Bondi raised an eyebrow. "You ruined it yourself the moment you chose corruption over justice." The judge pounded his gavel. "Bailiff, play the recording." The courtroom fell dead silent as the speakers crackled to life. And then a familiar voice echoed through the room, Mercer's voice. "Listen, I don't care what the evidence says. If we play this right, we can make Bondi look incompetent. Just stick to the plan, and I'll handle the rest." Then another voice spoke, one of the defendant's associates. "And the payment?" Mercer's reply was chilling. "Already wired. This case is a done deal." A collective gasp swept through the room. Mercer's face went from pale to ashen white. The judge's expression darkened. "Mr. Mercer, stand up." Mercer hesitated, his eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. "Now!" the judge ordered. Slowly, Mercer rose to his feet. His once cocky demeanor had vanished. The judge turned to the bailiff. "Place Mr. Mercer under arrest immediately." Bondi watched as the bailiff approached Mercer, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. The same man who had mocked her just minutes ago was now facing his own downfall. Mercer shook his head in disbelief. "You—" He turned to Bondi, eyes burning with anger. "You set me up." Bondi gave him a small, knowing smile. "No, Mr. Mercer," she said calmly. "You did that all on your own." The bailiff snapped the handcuffs around Mercer's wrists. The courtroom was stunned. And Pam Bondi? She simply took her seat because justice had already been served. The metallic click of the handcuffs echoed through the silent courtroom. Daniel Mercer, the same man who had insulted and mocked Pam Bondi just minutes earlier, was now standing in cuffs, his once arrogant smirk completely wiped from his face. The judge's voice was stern as he addressed the bailiff. "Take Mr. Mercer into custody. He will be formally charged with obstruction of justice, bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud." The courtroom erupted. Journalists in the gallery scrambled for their phones. Cameras flashed as reporters whispered urgently into their microphones. This was a scandal that would shake the legal world. Mercer, still in shock, turned to Bondi. "You planned this, didn't you?" he hissed. Pam didn't flinch. She simply adjusted her blazer and met his gaze. "No, Mercer. I just let the truth speak for itself." Two officers approached, gripping Mercer by the arms. He resisted for a moment before finally realizing there was no way out of this. As he was led past Pam, he sneered, "You just ruined my career." Pam tilted her head slightly. "No, you did that all by yourself." With that, Daniel Mercer was escorted out of the courtroom, disgraced, humiliated, and facing the very justice system he once manipulated. Aftermath: the power of integrity. As the doors slammed shut behind Mercer, the courtroom slowly settled. The judge cleared his throat. "Given these new revelations, I am ordering an immediate review of this case. The defendant's conviction will be reevaluated, and any legal malpractice will be addressed accordingly." Bondi nodded. Her job wasn't just about winning cases. It was about ensuring justice was done the right way. The judge turned to her. "Ms. Bondi, I'd like to commend you for your diligence and integrity. Without your efforts, this corruption may have gone unchecked." She gave a respectful nod. "Just doing my job, Your Honor." As the proceedings wrapped up, Pam gathered her files and walked toward the exit. But she wasn't alone. Outside the courtroom, a swarm of reporters had already gathered, their microphones and cameras pointed in her direction. "Ms. Bondi, did you know about Daniel Mercer's corruption before today? Were you expecting an arrest to happen? What does this mean for other cases he handled?" Pam paused, letting the questions rain down for a moment. Then she raised a hand, a signal for silence. When the crowd finally quieted, she spoke clearly and firmly. "The justice system is only as strong as the people who uphold it. Today's events prove that no one, no matter how powerful or influential, is above the law. My duty is to protect justice, and I will continue to do so." The crowd murmured. Cameras flashed. The headlines were already being written as Pam Bondi stepped away from the courthouse. She knew this wasn't just another victory in the courtroom. It was a statement that integrity still mattered, that justice still prevailed, and most importantly, that no one who abused their power would ever be safe from the truth. What did you think of this shocking courtroom showdown? Do you believe justice was served? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible real-life stories of justice and redemption.